Hey guys, quick note before we get started. So remember 2 weeks ago when I dropped that episode with Ryan Van, the new co-founder of Earlywork? That was actually my very first episode of my new segment, Dreamaking in Public. So think building in public, but not just with companies. It's building your life towards your biggest dreams. So every fortnight, you'll hear from a dream maker around the early 20s who's building anything from tech startups, streaming services, branding agencies, podcasts, and stronger systems, habits, and philosophies for life. So I'm very close with these individuals, and I'll be bringing them back on every few months to track their progress so that we can see their new mindset shifts, setbacks, new goals, and so that you can follow on in their journey and see what you can take from it as well. So if you're on the path to turning your dreams into reality, or just looking to see how people similar to you are getting started, this series is for you, and I'll be doing them every second week. So this week, the episode with James Wu will be the second installment of Dreamaking in Public. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of Ex-Vicarious. I'm Braith, and today I'm joined by James Wu. So James is a great mate of mine who's building Intellex, a platform that connects young, ambitious individuals to mentors in the industry that they want to work in. He dropped out of university in his first year to pursue tech sales, landing a 100K per year role at Ignition. After stints at Veeam Software and ParaFlare, he's now business development manager at a cybersecurity startup called Blackhawk Alert. Coming from a marketing background myself, I've learned heaps about the psychology behind sales from James, and I'm super keen to delve into some of that today, along with his personal journey. Alright, so I spent a lot of sleepless nights thinking, how do I become the best version of myself and leave my mark on the world? To answer this, I decided to ask exceptional people who have or are on the journey of doing just that. When you have big dreams, it's easy to just fantasize about them and live vicariously through your idols. But that's not how I want to live. So if you feel the same way, this podcast will show you how to make your dreams look more like goals by showing you how founders, creators, and game changers did it. You'll learn about their habits, mindsets, and strategies so you can stop dreaming and start dream making. I'm Braith, and this is Ex-Vicarious. Let's jump right in. James, bro, how are you going today?
Yeah, not too bad, Braith. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. Nice sunny day here today. Yeah, I wanted to just start off letting you introduce yourself a bit to the audience. Just tell them a little bit about yourself. Is there anything I missed or anything you wanted to highlight or talk about?
Yeah, not really. I think it was a good introduction. Yeah, dropped out of uni, was studying exercise physio, started to pursue tech sales as an entry-level role at Ignition as an SDR with on-target earnings was more around 85K, but I'll let that 100K slide because it sounds a bit nicer. But it's happy to be here. It's quite chilly today, so it's good to sit in and have a chat with a good mate.
Yeah, all right. Let's start with exercise physio. So, like, why did you actually choose that first for uni, and what kind of went through your mind to drop out and change the path that you were going on?
Yeah, really good question. I've always been quite an avid sports person. So I was playing national level water polo. I was a national level swimmer. So I always did the emphasis on exercise and health, especially something that I was very in tune with. I really understood. And I thought exercise was just a nice way to give back and help disabled and elderly people with improving their healthcare through exercise. Also, I didn't get the A to get in physio, so that's also another reason. But it wasn't the worst backup in the world. And I guess why tech sales? Around the same time when I was doing exercise physio, I had a family friend of mine come pick up my gym equipment because I was moving out. And so he just briefly mentioned to me tech sales, just in conversation, because he noticed that I like to talk and I was already doing a sales retail role at Telstra. And then after that conversation, I just delved in, looked more into it, saw the little salary, and I was pretty impressed. And then from there, the rest was history. I just deferred 1 year and never really went back. So that's the story there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know for a lot of people, even after graduating, doing like a entire computer science related course or commerce related course, finding that job in tech is pretty hard, especially around this time. You dropped out while you were still in your first year. So what do you think helped you actually land that first role at Ignition?
Yeah, I think it's I think the Telstra role that I discussed about previously, the retail sales role really helped me out. I know it might not seem directly related because it's retail, right? You could be retail David Jones, retail at Myers, even Macca's, right? But there are so many aspects to that role that I could have used and framed in a way that made me seem more aligned with Ignition. So an example of that is it's retail sales, but I actually sold to businesses as part of my job. So I would list that as B2B sales, right? That's something that,
Yeah.
was really aligned with their sort of job description. And then other things, other metrics is, as a salesperson, typically have KPIs that you have to hit. Typically, you have to talk to people that you've never talked to before. Those are all little things that I was able to pull out of my job and then fluff that up and then frame that in a way that made me seem like a really strong candidate for something like Ignition.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about what you did day to day at Ignition and I guess the most surprising things you learned just by being in that role?
Yeah, 100%. So the day to day, it's entry level tech sales. So if you guys don't know what that sort of looks like, it's a lot of calling. I was doing about 60 to 80 dials per day. And that was calling through a combination of inbound prospects and outbound. So what that looked like was if you were an accountant or a business owner looking expedite your proposal process, you'd maybe attend our webinar. And then I'd bug you after the webinar and be like, hey, what was the main reason for joining? What are you looking to get out of it? What can I help you with? And have that follow up with the goal of booking in another meeting with an account executive to close that sort of deal cycle, and they would run the demo and everything. So I was super top of funnel. And I guess what I really learned was that's when I first had my first exposure to really tech sales. And I had a really good sales mentor who was the territory manager at Ignition. And he just taught me a lot of skills in tech sales in terms of overcoming objections, how many touch points you should have before you stop contacting the prospect. A lot of the things that I didn't know beforehand. He was the sort of guy who really sat down with me. He was really straight up. And I guess in terms of what's the biggest thing I learned, it was that just because it's a no doesn't mean it's a no. And I know that makes me come off as a really pushy salesperson. But at the end of the day, it's all about how you frame the value, right? If they attended, there was a motivation there. It's just about uncovering that. And if you can't uncover it good enough, sometimes it's not actually a no. It's just more delving a bit deeper and asking the right questions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, for some of those things you learned about overcoming objections, I guess what was one of the aspects of overcoming an objection that you did during Intellex that was like a surprising moment for you, like something that he's taught you after going through your calls with you and seeing how you do sales, and then I guess the first time you implemented one of those strategies, could you talk about an example?
Yeah, 100%. To be frank, it was a while ago now, and I've been through quite a few different sales mentors since then. But I guess one of the earlier conversations was he just pushed out the fluffiness in my conversations. So, coming from a retail role, you're dealing with elderly people. You just have to be a nice person, and typically they'll listen to you and they'll be super receptive of what you're trying to say. However, in the B2B world, it's very different. These business owners, they don't want to spend money where it's not valuable. So, you're going to get a lot of no's, right? And I think what he taught me was to just be as straightforward as possible and then be shameless in uncovering those pains. So example of that would be, let's say I was called a prospect. He would say, nah, not interested. Then he gave me the kahunas and the validation for me to pretty much go, hey, I understand you said you're not interested. However, you did attend this half an hour webinar, right? So there must be some sort of motivation there for you to go in there and spend half an hour of your day to listen to us speak. I'm just trying to ask what that would be, and I just want to explore that a bit further with you. Would you be keen to discuss in more detail over a 30-minute conversation with an account executive of mine? So something like that, right? Having that guile to just push back on them, really pin it on them. That was something I learned, and it's something that I've stuck with since then. I think before learning that, if they said no, I'd be like, cool, hang up, whatever. Let you get back to your day. I'll call the next person. And I feel like that's what a lot of more inexperienced tech salespeople do. They just give up when the first no comes around. But if you have the validation, it's just about sticking to that and having conviction to follow through and pin that back on the prospect and just delve a bit deeper.
Yeah, so I know that example is quite specific to the tech sales in talking to a prospect, but just the confidence to push back on objections and really explore where there can be some opportunity between yourself and the person you're talking to. That, I guess, that's a skill that could be quite transferable as well. So have you ever found yourself using those sort of skills or that sort of mentality in your life outside of tech sales, or even to do with your career, but maybe just outside of that scenario specifically?
Yeah, 100%. Like, in my own opinion, I feel like sales is one of those things that, as you said, they're quite transferable to other facets of your life. I would find myself being a bit more straightforward after going through tech sales. Some of it comes with being jaded, but beyond that, that's just, I think, a symptom of tech sales as well. You're able to cut out the fluff a lot, get right to the point. And it's something that I feel like I have improved upon. And I feel like something that reflects well in how I communicate to others in my day to day outside of my professional career. How that translates to my career, to answer the other side of the question, is I feel like in terms of talking to my managers, presenting my KPIs, et cetera, the things outside of just talking to a prospect, I've been able to communicate much more effectively and communicate in the way that I understand how the other person's feeling and their needs and their requirements, and then accommodate that in the way I communicate with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to take a bit of a right turn here. I just wanted to explore earlier on in your life, before everything to do with tech sales came about. What would you say is one of your earliest dreams you had that you still have today?
Great question. I would say it makes me sound shallow, but I'd say just being having money or being rich. I think
Right.
that's something that's always stuck to me. I feel wealth is not exactly happiness, but it gives you things that make you happy. So it's as close as you can pretty much get, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one of the dreams, and that's something that is still a motivator for me. Outside of also trying to help people, trying to do things that better the world, I think money is definitely, to be honest, still a motivator for sure.
Yeah. And is that something that very early on you already saw different ways, I guess, to make money? Or did you ever have any barriers or early on in life where you felt you may have been putting a lot of time and attention um, to things that you thought would bring you money, but weren't actually providing any results?
Yeah, I have an interesting response to that one, to be honest. I think it was during HSC.
Yeah.
I got really into crypto because that's when the hype was. And like, to be honest, I think the whole reason why I didn't get into physio was because during my HSC, when I was supposed to be studying, I was actually just researching crypto.
Yeah.
And I think the dividends that I got from that were outside of financial literacy, obviously it was a monetary return that I saw was like, to me, a high school was quite a good sum of money. And so in my head, I was like, why am I studying for HSC if I can be earning this much money right now? In hindsight, I don't think that was the most mature move in my life, but I would say that's definitely a moment when I was like, there are different avenues to earn money. There are different ways. I think following a traditional path is good if you want stability, but if you really want that velocity in your wealth, then you have to do something that's different from what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. So I know, like, for yourself, you do a couple of different things, like outside of doing tech sales, you also been starting up the company Intellex. Yeah, so could you just tell the audience a little bit more about Intellex, the reason behind it or the story behind it, and I guess what you guys are planning to do?
100%. So, yeah, Intellex is a mentorship marketplace as a really high level summary. How it came about was I just felt like throughout high school, there wasn't a good guidance, especially in the selective school, private school Asian space, where pretty much the only two paths pushed on you are the doctor or a lawyer, right? And if you were able to go down those paths because you were very academic and you got the right ATAR, a lot of people would then drop it off like down the track. That's what I've noticed in uni. And a lot of people beyond that, after graduating, might do the role they've studied, such as accounting for a few years, and then actually look to change industries and careers anyway because they didn't actually enjoy it. I saw that as a huge travesty. I saw that as a huge pain point in the whole education system and career based mentoring system, especially with the youth. I feel like it doesn't make sense for someone to put themselves through 60K worth of hex, do their role for 3 to 5 years, and then change careers anyway. So my co-founder Jason, who's in banking, it's something that he also resonated with, and so we came together and we thought of a way. Hey, how do we democratize mentorship so it's so widely accessible that high schoolers, university students, young professionals are able to access people who are able to give them genuine insights into the different career paths that they might be able to undertake, instead of just, let's say, the big four just pushing at some career stall at uni, just pushing how good they are. I wouldn't consider that an educated insight. So it's really just how do we give young people an educated insight into what they could potentially go down, I
Yeah.
guess, is the dream of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess what's the sort of timeline that you're looking at? So, who are the sort of students that can benefit from this program? What sort of industries can they expect to get into? And like, where can they start finding out a bit more about Intellex?
Yeah, great question. So I think in terms of timeline, we ran into some dev issues, as I've yapped on about for a while now. So we're about 3 months as of recording, I would say, away, optimistically. The industries we're targeting are the ones that typically people find the most tumultuous. So you'd think of that be investment banking, medicine, law, technology, sales, marketing, engineering. Those are just some of the few. Obviously, as we grow and we adapt, we're going to onboard more. But I just think that's a good starting point for the ones that we can start with and really get the ground running on. In terms of how you can find us, yeah, just Academy. That's our URL. It's pretty straightforward. To be fair, forgive me if the formatting isn't the best at this current time, but it'll get better hopefully when you guys check it out.
Yeah, I'll put all the links to that in the show notes for people to get more information. And yeah, I wanted to go back to when you mentioned from doing crypto, open your eyes up to seeing all these different paths where you could make money. And I know that you did also mention that there was a point where you were moving out, and that's around the same time that you discovered tech sales. So, just moving into the real estate space a bit now,
Sure.
I want to just explore like how's the experience moving out, and for people who don't really know anything about real estate, could you just speak on that experience a little bit, just first time moving out and what that experience is like?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start off with like my main motivation for moving out. I actually moved out, I think it was a week after turning 19. So actually still quite young. I know a lot of people move out because a whole range of situations that they have at home. For me, I was fortunate enough to move out because I felt like I just needed to grow as a person. I feel like home was good. It was a good environment for me, but it just wasn't able to give me that push to get to the next level. I'm a huge believer of being comfortable makes you complacent. Like comfortability, just, I don't know if that's a word, but I think it breeds complacency.
Yeah.
And that's something I've always stuck with. So at the time, I felt like I was getting complacent. I was doing in and out of uni, doing some other retail and side hustle jobs. I felt like moving out would give me that really big push to go down tech sales and elevate my knowledge and whatnot in life. In terms of, sorry, was the question real estate? The second part of the
Yeah, just
question?
like moving, because like for I guess for people who have wanted to move out or invest in real estate, like
Yeah.
doing it at a younger age is harder, but also a lot of the time they don't know as much about it. So yeah, I guess what was the first experience like just moving out in the first place, and what are all the things you had to learn about real estate during that process?
Yeah. So when I moved out, obviously I had to learn how to be on my own. So that's cooking, cleaning, all of that shabam. And then obviously taking care of my health. That was a big one. And I guess in terms of real estate itself, I would say a good starting point if you don't have any paid resources, you don't want to follow some dodgy YouTubers or cheesy LinkedIn influencers, is pretty much do your own research because numbers don't really lie. A good starting point would just be go on like realestate.com, find places where, you know, properties have recently sold in, and then compare that to how the price is currently, and then delve into why that's increased over the past few years or whatnot. Realestate.com has a suburb profile where you can see, you know, how much an average 3 bedroom house or something has increased in the past year, right? And then do your own research. Why has that increased? Has there been, you know, council development? Has there been a metro getting built? Has there been an investment project by the government? all those sort of different metrics, once you start understanding what drives real estate growth, that's where it can really be applied to almost every single suburb, because there's no such thing as just rising for the sake of rising. There's always a factor, whether it be investor sentiment, Australia's relation with overseas investors and how tight they do their economic policies and whatnot. So there's always a reason behind everything. I'm just being curious enough to go in there, look at the data, and finding your own way is something I'd recommend for sure as a good starting point.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just looking at these different ways of making money, you've dabbled in real estate, as you said, crypto. You got the tech sales roles, and then starting up Intellex. I guess moving forward, how does your time look like, and time and energy look like when you're thinking about how much time you're going to spend on each one? Which one would you say you're prioritizing a lot more, and how are you trying to balance all of these things?
Yeah, great question. To be honest, I'm not the best at balancing time. Crypto's already a lost dream of mine. I exited that pony a long time ago. But I guess in terms of the other two, so Intellex, that's a startup, right? And that's obviously my own thing. That's my baby. I've always wanted to be in a startup. And now that I do own a startup and something that I'm very passionate about, I ideally want to make that, obviously see how it goes, but make that a bigger thing and bigger part of my life down the track. However, currently in my tech sales role as a business development manager for Blackhawk, which is a cybersecurity startup, as you mentioned earlier, I really like the cybersecurity space. It's something I actually also am passionate about. I really like my co-founders. They're very good leaders, and I feel like I have a lot to learn from them. So as of now, I work full-time 4 days a week, which is a blessing. And the other 3 days and outside of business hours, I'll then spend on Intellex. So that's currently how the split is currently. So I would say in terms of a weekly holistic view, 4 days a week on Blackhawk and then 3 days a week on Intellex would be the split. But that's come with its own challenges, because that's obviously slowed down the velocity of how fast I can grow Intellex, and it's something I'm still currently juggling with. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, I see. I'm keen to see it as the months roll by and see as more progress comes along. And as you said, having your baby out there in the world. Keen for that. In terms of, yeah, Black Hawk and your passion for cybersecurity, how did that start?
Yeah, well, it goes back to what you said originally, like what motivates me, right? And it was money. So getting into tech sales, I looked up which industries in tech sales pays the most. And cybersecurity was already quite up there 4 years ago. So obviously, Ignition being a fintech company, it wasn't exactly where I saw myself ending up, but it was a very good stepping stone into the tech sales world. And they gave me an offer, which was amazing. Um, and so pretty much starting my tech sales journey, I was already pretty set on cybersecurity, just based off of how much it pays. And then I got headhunted for another better sales position at Veeam, which is a data security company, and then went through redundancy and then got hired at another cybersecurity company before this one called ParaFlare, which ended up being acquired by Deloitte. So that's where my cybersecurity journey started, I would say, was with Veeam. But yeah, the main motivation there was money, but I've grown to love it. It's obviously become super relevant, obviously protecting businesses and people's babies, if you can say. And so I do feel like sometimes I am doing a genuine social good while still reaping the dividends of getting paid, which is
Yeah,
something I can't complain about.
yeah. I just wanted to take another right turn. So
Go for it.
I remember you mentioning that since starting at Black Hawk, and I guess because you've started to learn a little bit more technical stuff as well, and that's led you down a path of building all these things at home, learning to code and figuring out practical solutions for it for yourself and your family at home. So I just wanted to yeah, delve into that a little bit. Like, what are the things you've been building, and I guess what has been the motivation behind it?
So what have I been building at home? Was that your main question?
Yeah, what are the things you've been coding?
Great question. So yeah, I did a little home project of mine, just like a little passion project. So making my own home server. That was so I could automate sort of the lights and what you'd imagine, the my bed heater, everything at home. And that's built on a Ubuntu server platform, which is a Linux based platform. And so a bit of that was coding Linux. So learning how to manage that and then just downloading different softwares. Was this aligned with what you're trying to say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, so yeah, making my own home server to improve the quality of life of my own room. So right now, what it does is if I leave my room, it'll sense that and it'll shut everything down. When I come home, it'll turn on all the lights and bits and bobs. So it's super cool. I guess that's something that I really enjoy, and I feel like you should always be learning different things. Just to deviate away from that question, that passion's been done. So I've now moved on to watchmaking, figuring out how to build my own watch off AliExpress, which has been a really big YouTube journey of mine. I'm just watching different YouTubers make their own watches, and I think it's super cool. So that's my next passion project. Always learning, always growing, staying curious. That's the way forward, I reckon.
So I guess moving quickly between these different passions and
Yeah.
starting something like where you need to code quite a lot
Yeah.
in order to create, I guess, something that way you can, when you're leaving your house, it can shut everything down and sense that. How do you go about learning those skills, especially when your background's not typically super technical? Like,
Yeah.
where did you figure out to learn how to do these things quickly?
Yeah, I think honestly, YouTube's been my biggest resource. I'm not the type of bloke, as you could probably tell from me not getting into physio, that can just sit down and just study something from a textbook. I can't do that. I actually have to, I'm more visual. I like learning and watching people do it and then me going through it and making the mistakes and doing it myself. So I'd say YouTube is the best platform. Everything that I've ever started, crypto, home labs of my home server, and real estate, and even what was the last one? Watchmaking. That's all
Yeah,
stemmed from YouTube. Going
fair
on
enough,
YouTube,
fair enough.
seeing what, spending my time on YouTube, learning what different people do in their day to day, and then seeing what piques my interest, and then giving that a crack.
Yeah, I'm definitely keen to see the watches
Yeah,
and for
mate,
you to
don't worry.
teach me afterwards.
Yeah, that's it.
So I wanted to go a little bit back in high school, water polo, swimming, all the championships and all of that. Did you ever see a path where you could go pro and spend a lot more time on those sort of areas? And I guess where did all the passion for that come from during high school?
Yeah, great question. So I started swimming in year two competitively. So obviously quite young. That passion just came from it being just sport, to a place I can get my energy out. And it's something I felt like I was naturally okay at. So it was something I was willing to give it a crack and put some real time and sweat and blood into. And then around year 10, I really started to get burnt out. Not year 10, sorry, year 8 or year 9. I started to get burnt out from swimming. I started to not enjoy it as much. I was seeking more of a team based sport, something to where I can grow with other people and learn more from being part of a team. And my mom was pretty much, you've been swimming for so long, it'd be a waste if you just drop that and just change to, let's say, another team based sport like basketball, which I was playing, but it was more of a hobby and I was never professional at it by any means. And a lot of friends in my group who were swimmers also played water polo. So I just thought I'd give that a crack. And it turns out being a swimmer in water polo is a great skill to have. So that journey was really accelerated. I went to state level comps and then national level comps within 2 years, which was really good. So that's where that one was. In terms of why I didn't go pro, as stark as this might sound, it's because I'm Asian. And I feel like it doesn't hold me back anywhere else in life, obviously with corporate and whatnot. But when it comes to a more physical sport, to give you context, my water polo goalie, he was like nearly 7 foot. So in terms of vertically challenging attributes, I felt like it held me back a little bit in terms of fully going professional. Obviously, you have professional people who are Asian, but I just felt I wanted money and I was vertically challenged in that area. I felt like that combination led me more down tech sales than professional water polo or swimming.
Yeah, fair enough, but you're still the Magikarp either way.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to continue talking a little bit more about just the tech sales journey. For people who want to get into tech sales, what would you suggest that they should do as the first thing if they don't have any experience with it yet?
Good question. I would first look at if you like even like sales, to be honest. It's I'm a strong believer in, I know there's different opinions about this online, but everyone can do sales. You can learn to do sales, that's true. But I feel like some people naturally, let's say if you're an extrovert, an introvert or whatnot, you're more aligned to other career paths than sales. So I guess my first step would be, do you even like sales? It's a pretty easy question to do if you're already in retail because you're selling to people and you're talking to people you've never talked to before. That's a lot of what sales is. So if you like retail and you enjoy the aspects of communication and earning commissions and whatnot, then you might enjoy sales. And I would say give that a crack then. But let's say don't have that exposure in the sales world. I would recommend as a first step to go out there and find a retail role. Go through people saying no to you, go through different managers, go through having a KPI and hitting that KPI before you decide whether sales is for you. And if you do have that retail experience, I would say do your own research. Like, it sounds harsh. There's YouTubers online. I wouldn't say they're the single source of truth, but watch a few different YouTubers. Not a huge. I'm not sponsored, but like Early Work is still in some really interesting space. Obviously, they have resources out there that are for free that I think is really cool, and I wish I had something similar when I first started. But how I got started was watching a bloke called Patrick Dang on YouTube, right? It always goes back to YouTube. So that's what I would recommend for sure.
Yeah. And in terms of, I guess, because you were able to experience a few different companies as well, what would you say the lifestyle's like working in tech sales? Especially, I know that you also mentioned ParaFlare while you're working there, they were actually acquired by Deloitte. So
Yeah.
technically, you would have been working in Deloitte for a period of time during that. So how does tech sales, the environment and the lifestyle, differ from top four or more corporate accounting type firms?
Yeah, so I can't speak too much to the Deloitte lifestyle, but in terms of from what I understand, tech sales is definitely work from home, right? It's typically more remote, work from home. Your hours are interesting. They're mixed and varied according to how well you're hitting your KPI. Being sales, I guess at the end of the day, people only care about if you're hitting your target because that's what brings money into the business. So you could work 20 hours, no, 20 hours. That's ridiculous. Sorry. You could work like 12 hours a day, but if you don't hit your KPI, you're not seen as anyone better than if you work 3 hours a day and hit your KPI. So that's where it differs. I feel like traditional corporate, and if you're not in the sales function, people look at how many hours you work as an indication of how much value you bring. But in sales, it's truly how much money you bring in is how much value you bring. So I guess that's the beauty of it. I guess to answer your question, my day-to-day lifestyle, you wake up, you do your calls. If you hit your KPI, you keep calling. Sometimes you have quieter days where you've already hit your KPI, so you just kick back a little and you have that pressure, like you don't have the pressure of trying to hit that target compared to imagine like a marketing role where you're just there 9 to 5, right? It's the same throughout. There's not much.
Yeah. Did you have any co-workers actually who, as you said, may have spent very little time? Seems like they spend very little time, but still happen to be one of the top performers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being in sales, as I said, it's just how much money you bring in. So I actually absolutely have worked with coworkers that they close a cracker deal every single day, and then at lunch they just go out for a bit of a swim, go to the gym, spend a bit of time for themselves, reward themselves, which I feel like is important to do, especially in such a high intensity job like sales. And I've also worked with people that work like literally 10 hours a day and close their deals, and then they have more pressure on them. And I've been there in both sides of the coin. And it's just the beauty of sales. It's ups and downs. Sometimes you have more work, sometimes you have less. But yeah.
Do you think there are certain things you can do when it comes to upskilling perspective or habits, disciplines, even mindset that can put you on the side of more so doing those big deals and being able to close very quickly and then having a lot more time to relax? Is there a mindset shift to? I know you said there are always going to be ups and downs, like more work sometimes, less work sometimes, but are there actions you can take, I guess, to increase your strike rate in a way?
Yeah, absolutely you can, because no one starts off as that guy who just smashes out deals and then is, drinking a margarita by the beach by 3 p.m. Everyone starts off as an SDR. They start off getting rejected 99% of the time. They go through that shit. The difference is some people are able to grow a lot faster through seeking out different sales mentors, talking to different sales leaders, connecting with other salespeople and learning where they succeed. Because to be honest, in the business, you're going to have three types of people. You can have the top performers, you're going to have the average performers, you can have the bottom performers. If you are a bottom performer, just learn from the top performer. That's as simple as it is, to be honest. Because if you're saying the same things, learning their mindsets and learning how the way they talk and communicate in terms of how they show the product value and how they accelerate that sales process, then there's no reason why you can't replicate that.
Yeah,
So
awesome. So I wanted
yeah,
to jump to some questions that I ask every guest now. And the first
sure.
one would be, if you had to live your life following the words of one single quote, what would it be?
It's a great question. I think that one would be best answered by one that's actually on my company's group site. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. So that's a Steve Jobs quote. And it's something I resonate with because I've obviously experienced burnout already a few times, given my very quick stint at some of the companies I've worked at. And all of that comes from I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. Um, so I guess that would be something I have taken into more account when I make my day-to-day decisions and in my career is to do what you enjoy, and then you'll do it well and
Yeah,
hopefully be
awesome.
successful.
And if you could reach everyone in the world for 30 seconds, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say be more excited to succeed than afraid to fail. I feel like people are constantly held back because you're either comfortable or you're too scared to fail. But the reality of it is, I believe you only live once, right? So the worst case scenario is that you fail, you learn, you grow from it. It sounds cheesy. You've probably heard it a billion times, but just grow from that. And then eventually, statistically, you have to succeed. You have to, and you will, as long as you get up and give it another crack. Another one would be just don't be comfortable. As soon as you're comfortable, you're happy where you are, the 9 to 5, and you're not looking towards or forwards to the next thing, then that's where you start to experience a bit of boredom. And it's hard to get out of that bubble when you're in it.
Yeah, I love that, bro. So for the final thing, what I wanted to do is ask you the question that last week's guest actually asked, and that was actually by Ryan Van. I know you mentioned
Cool.
early work earlier, so I think it ties in pretty well. So the question is, are you where you thought you would be 5 years ago?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not would be the answer to that question. And I imagine it's the answer that a lot of other guests on this podcast might have. And it's just because if you are the type of person to grow and love growth and stay curious, you'll never stay on one path. And 5 years ago, I don't know what textiles was. And this might show my age a little bit, but I barely knew what anything was at that point. I haven't moved out. I was pretty
Yeah.
much just a baby in my diapers, and that's about it. But yeah, I think 5 years ago, I had no idea that I'd end up here, whether that's good or bad, or whether 5 years ago me would be disappointed in me now. I would have no idea. But I'm quite content, and I feel like that you shouldn't set yourself too much of a strict expectation of what 5 years time looks like. Obviously, set your goals, but in terms of the more minute details, just go with the flow, stay curious, keep improving yourself, and then you'll be all right in 5 years time.
Yeah, that's great. So to finish off, do you have a question for next week's guest? It could be anything you want. They I Yeah, they won't know until they come on, so whatever you want to ask them.
Oh, cool. I guess it would be think of the most pivotal moment of your life. What would you do differently?
Okay, most pivotal moment of your life. All right, got it. Thank you very much. Last thing before we finish off, is there anywhere you want to direct people, places they can find more about you or about Intellex, or just anything you want to leave for the audience?
The best way is, yeah, just reach out on LinkedIn. Add me. My name's just James Wu, last name WU. Hopefully, you guys know how to spell James. And then I'm more than happy to chat. I'm happy to grab a coffee, not copy. And yeah, happy to talk more about intellects and whatnot and my journey through LinkedIn for sure. That's the easiest way to reach me. I'm always on there.
Yeah, awesome. I'll leave all of that, links to all of those things in the show notes. And yeah, thank you, James. Thank you for
Awesome.
spending the time. It was great to chat.
Thanks for having me, Braith. Likewise.